Welcome back to Decoding the Flow, the podcast where we explore the concept on creative consciousness and how you can live by creation, not reaction. I'm your host, Drica Lobo. And today I'm really excited. It's a solo episode. Like I kind of like to go deep into certain concepts. And today I really want to talk about something that I think almost every creative person experiences, but not a lot of people can truly understand what it really means. And what we're going to talk about, it is about creative blocks. And when I talk about creative blocks, it's not just the surface level of creative blocks. It's not just like, I don't know what to paint, or I'm going to wait for inspiration, or even, I don't know what I'm going to talk about on my social media. I really want to dive into why so many people still feel disconnected from their creativity, their voice, their ideas, their purpose, and honestly away from themselves. And I got inspired by today's topic, reading this book, Letting Go, of David Hawkins. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's one of my favorite writers. He wrote Powers versus Force and The Map of Consciousness. Hello, let's talk about consciousness. But I've been diving deep into letting go, and I think I'm never going to be the same after reading this book. I'm going to go through this concept of creative blocks, and I'm going to give my own interpretation to it. And also everything that I've been learning, not only in this book, but everything I went through. So many creative blocks in my life. It's kind of ridiculous. I can make a whole episode about this, but we're not going to go into my personal stories per se, because I really want to dive in and present it to you some of the topics and the ideas that this book presented. Let's begin. I've been thinking about this, and I really believe that a lot of people, they are creative blocked, not because they lack talent, but maybe they learned it was safer to be liked than to be fully expressed. And what I mean by that is in this new era that we're in the era of social media. So in today's episode, I want to explore why fear lives underneath creative blocks, how judgment and perfectionism suppress authentic expression, why so many people perform instead of being their own fully creative genius. Also, how emotional suppression keeps us away from flow. And it's very interesting because when I pick the topics to talk on this podcast, they are very present in my life. So I am here today, not because I have all figured this out, but I really want to come into a place that, hey, I'm here. I'm still learning even after 10 years of living a creative life. And when I say 10 years, it's actually 15 years or even more. So all of my ideas and the concepts, they're based on my own understanding and my own life experiences coming from someone inside this work with you. So whether you're an artist, an entrepreneur, a writer, a musician, or simply someone who feels creatively disconnected, I think this episode might help you understand what really is happening underneath the surface of creative blocks. Let's get into it. Before we begin, I wanted to remind you that the best free way that you can support this platform is either by subscribing on our YouTube channel or download this episode. It's going to be so helpful so this message can spread across all of the other creatives who may be wanting this message just like you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So help me spread this message, and I really appreciate you. Okay, let's go. Part one of this podcast. I've been doing scripts on my on this solo episodes, and every time I do an interview, it's a little bit more intuitive. But talking about creative blocks, and I've been living this, especially in my solo episodes. So I'm gonna share with you everything that I've been doing, not just now in my life, creating this podcast, but also like all of the past versions of myself who stopped painting and stopped creating for many, many years. My first point, I believe it's going to hurt some people. And then when I wrote it down, I was like, should I say that or should I not? Like, exactly, I've been living this experiences with you because I think one of the biggest blocks and the biggest reasons people lose their touch with their creativity in today's, it is because we slowly become performers instead of just expressors. And what I mean by that is in an era of likes and subscribes and comments, we tended to hide ourselves in a very sneaky ways. And we do have to become so aware of this realization that am I creating or am I editing myself to perform? Many of us, because of this modern world that everything is so accessible, I believe that it is very easy to stop creating from instinct, from curiosity, from inspiration, emotional, or even our own truth. And it's very easy to start to perform. How will people react? Will this generate engagements? Will this make me look smart? Will people understand me? Will this be accepted by others or even my family? How many people say to me, I don't want to share because of my family, or I only get comments from my mom. When I started my work, I had none of this. This was 20 years ago. It's interesting just to watch and to become an observer and even on my own reactions before I hit posts. Maybe you can resonate. And if you do, please leave a comment below. I just want to open this conversation in a very easy way that maybe those creative blocks had nothing to do with your own creativity per se, but it has everything to do with you feeling safe, being vulnerable, or being seen. With social media, we become hyper aware of perception of others, or we start editing ourselves even before we even begin. And eventually we build this version of ourselves that it's meant to be digestible, but not authentic. And that is the danger zone. And like I said, this is something that I'm living right now, especially with this podcast. Should I say this? Am I going to be myself talking about this? Who am I to talk about this? I do so much inner work that those voices in my head, they're like watching a football game. I just let them cheer on and I'll do my own thing. I believe social media is such a wonderful tool that we have to spread our creations, share ideas, to build communities. But also, many creatives may spend years deluding ourselves in order to stay emotionally safe. And the problem when this happens, it's because the more disconnected you become with your own authentic voice, your own self expression, the harder creativity feels. Because let's be honest, creativity is not performance. So I cannot stop thinking about that. Maybe our creative blocks, they are not necessarily creative blocks. Maybe they're just emotional filters because a lot of people aren't creative anymore. They are managing perception, controlling how people perceive you. And hey, I've been there. And I have to say, performancing is exhausting because it disconnects you from the real you. I even wrote on my blog the other day about selling my art. Most original art, they looked very uncomfortable before it looks brilliant. In this book, he talks about suppressed emotions and how much energy gets trapped inside resistance. And when I talk about resistance, it's not even only on the negative connotation. like resistance to fear or shame or guilt, grief, embarrassments, rejection. He talks about the resistance of the very opposite side of those emotions. So resistance of feeling in flow, resistance to love, resistance to a happy life. Because how many of you, and myself included, we get so, we identify so much with our own problems that it becomes our own identity. And the resistance, it is not about these negative connotations. It's about the very opposite. It's about happiness. It's about love. It's about success. Sometimes we are just caught up so much in our own problems that we resist the other side of the spectrum. So, for example, if I want to become an artist and I feel shame because I know I have this talent and I haven't used in so long because I decided to go into the corporate world because it feels safe. So I carry within myself this shame, and this shame will lead me to self hatred. And this self hatred will lead me to not expressing myself fully. So the resistance is not to change my own reality, but because of the guilt, because of the self hatred, the resistance is the very opposite of being a creative genius that I am. Like, how much enough is enough? How much am I going to be accepting the life that I am unhappy? Also, it's impossible to talk about shame and trauma and all of these blocks if we don't talk about our past traumas. Past traumas can be something so small, it can be something very, very big. I remember when I used to work in journalism and I wasn't a pro. I came just from the college. And when you go out of the field and you have to start working, and I was using this camera, it was a different camera, and I was covering radical sports. When I put the camera on, somebody from the same field as a journalist and looked at me and he said to me, "You have no idea what you're doing." It really affects me so much that I almost gave up on my journalism career. But why? The deeper question is why? Why do we give so much importance to our outside reality? Why do we give so much importance of the commentary of other people that don't even know you? Why are we worried about social media engagement if most of the people who are there, they don't even know you? It is that maybe a deeper layer of low self worth, or maybe because we are still thinking that we need outside approval to become who we truly are. These are like very deep questions, and creative blocks has everything to do with this because once we go into a trauma response, for example, that journalism, it seems so small, but it was very traumatic for me. I would never be able to touch another equipment if I didn't have somebody to say, "Hey, you're doing good," or "Hey, you're doing right." And stands for not knowing who you are. But we're gonna do another episode about finding your authentic self. I started noticing how much creativity becomes blocked when the nervous systems associates expression with dangers. And going back to all of the trauma response, you or maybe you know someone who were criticized when they were a child, or judged, or compare, made fun, or made you feel that you were too much or you didn't really fit in anywhere, not in your family or not even in your school. Sorry to interrupt your podcast, but I just want to let you know that this is the last few days that you can get a copy of the first edition of my book, Decoding the Flow. I wrote this book back in 2020, and I have to tell you that this book not only changed my entire life, but it changed the lives of so many creatives and artists. You can read the reviews on Amazon, but this book, we decided we are going to discontinuing selling this book only because I am in the middle of writing the second edition. But the reason I want you to get a copy of this book, because this is the basic needs of living a creative life that is aligned with your soul. This is the beginning of everything. We only have 10 copies of this book, and I'm going to leave the link underneath for you to get direct from my publisher. So it's going to be shipped to you from Culver City, Los Angeles, California. So don't get from Amazon. So get the last 10 copies from my publisher, and I can't wait for you to get your copy. Okay, back to the episode. So the big deal is that even if your mind wants to move forward with your creativity, but if your nervous system see as a threat, you're never going to move forward, because the nervous system is all based on your past experiences. You can visualize, you can manifest, you can write your dreams down. If you don't understand about your nervous system regulating, and if your nervous system is to feel that going after your dreams is not safe enough for you to do it, you are going to procrastinate. You are going to self-sabotage. So you see, it is not even a game of will or wanting to be that person. It's more of understanding what was the thing from the past that is still running the show in your body. Because when we talk about nervous systems, I'm not a pro about nervous systems, but I know a little bit because I've been doing a lot of work in nervous system regulations. And until your nervous systems understands that it is safe for you to create and to play and to become the most authentic version of yourself, you are going to find excuses not to do it. So think about, sometimes procrastination isn't laziness, and it's emotional protection. Or sometimes perfectionism is not about excellence. It's about wearing a mask. It's wearing a sophisticated clothing. And sometimes, and I had to learn this the hard way, sometimes overthinking may just be your mind trying to avoid vulnerability. Because whatever you decide to create, we're not creating privately anymore. It's very rarely when you see somebody creative from its own sake. We always want to, because of social media, we always are creating to express ourselves, yes, of course, but also to put into the world. Either is a publishing or posting or sharing our artwork in an exhibition or just on Instagram or YouTube or whatever you prefer. And just from that fact, it can really activate something very emotionally in you. For example, going back to when I was a journalist and somebody criticized me because I was using the camera the wrong way, that it really affected me. It took me a lot of years to overcome that. But once you are in the middle of that feeling, of that uncomfortable feeling, you just have to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And you keep asking this question repeatedly until you find the root cause. For example, my appearance. I remember I got rejected so many times because of my teeth, because I'm Italian and I speak with a lot of gestures. This really blocked me. And it took me like from almost 20 years to go back behind the camera. Of course, I have the art all along and I do share my art. I'm very proud of what I do, but to come back to behind the cameras, it is something that I'm still fighting with myself and my self-confidence. I still have to deal with all of the things that once somebody criticizing me, I took that as a truth. So don't let your traumas define you. The real juice here is to feel the feelings and to not identify yourself to anything or anyone that talks about something else that you don't believe yourself to be. So if you are really excited to share your art or to start your podcast or to have this brilliant book published, and somebody says to you, what are you thinking? This is very normal, by the way. If that person who is telling you, if he's not a bestseller, you should ignore. You can even say to yourself, I don't resonate with this answer. You have to stop, identify yourself with all these negative thoughts and negative things that you even hear, or even the negative things that you talk about yourself. You can even be very self-critical about yourself in the mirror, but you still can become so aware of this negative self-talk that you can decide, that's the word, decide, not to identify with anything negative. That's the secret. Your real you, it is underneath the polished version, the strategic version. It is underneath your safe version. And it's also underneath the social approved version of all of the things that you wanted to bring to fruition. And, this is something that I have to live through it to be able to share. The things that feels most alive inside you are the very things that makes you feel most vulnerable. Let me repeat that. The things that feel the most alive inside of you are also the things that feel the most vulnerable to express. I posted on the stories the other day. I read this somewhere. I don't know where exactly, but it makes so much sense to me. It talks about your wildest dreams are your true dreams. You see, social media is a wonderful thing, but it can also your own capabilities of going forward because of this fear of not being good enough, of comparing yourself to others, of doing the things that you think would be accepted, but it's not really true. So I really want you to stop and think about it. How much of yourself are you willing to give up to become fully accepted? So think about it, your art or your creations, the more you that you can be, the more weird that you can be, the more vulnerable that you can be, the best. Because, hey, that's what makes you unique. I am trying to get back to all my weirdness because, hey, I was so laugh F in high school. They become my superpower. That's why your uniqueness, your weirdness matters. Your intuition matters. Because let's be honest, originality, it doesn't come from copying culture. It comes from authentic, safe versions of ourselves. It comes from listening to ourselves. It comes from being honest and being in integrity with our own ideas and values. It comes from our own truth, our own versions of truth. Even like looking back in my life, I had abandoned some parts of myself to be accepted, grabbing the mic to express myself in a different way. And even when I even wrote my book, Decoding the Flow, I had suffered major crisis of who the heck am I? What am I doing? This book is awful. So I think many creatives secretly know when they are abandoning themselves. You can feel it when you start performing and when you stop being yourself, your work start feeling empty, heavy, forced, or even calculated. Because success without alignment, it just creates another kind of emptiness. And beautiful social media again, I think we are going into the era that everybody is just starved for truth, is starved for authenticity, is starved of less a polished version of the selves. And you can see that just scroll down social media. Everything is less polished. Everything is like cameras on, hands on. You speak what it comes to mind, and that's it. These are the most authentic expressions. And even if you're an artist like myself, what you want to put into this world visually, is that true? Is that really true? Or is it a performance? Or are you painting because you wanted to express your feeling? Or are you painting because you believe that people are going to like it? So that being said, authenticity, it truly requires us to accept imperfection, to accept our humanness, to accept our emotional currents, ups and downs. It makes us feel alive as long as we are true with ourselves. And during my 100 days of art practice, and I just finished a few weeks ago, and showing up every single day creatively sounds very beautiful. It sounds very beautiful in theory, but emotionally, it reveals your raw self. Everything about yourself, your inconsistence, your perfectionism, your self judgments, your emotional patterns, your excuses, your attachments to outcomes. And I talked about this before, there are many, many, many days between those 100 days that I didn't feel inspired at all. There was a lot of days that I questioned myself. There was a lot of days that I felt invisible. There was other days that I felt like, what am I doing? Where is this going? But the good thing is, and that's why I always recommend you to do and to create your own challenge for yourself if you wanted to input a different activity in your day to day. Because what surprised me the most was realizing that consistency, it slowly begin removing all of the emotional drama around creating. Somewhere between 2 weeks, I completely stopped negotiating with myself, which is the same exactly thing that I do when I have to go to the gym. And that's why I stay consistent, because I don't negotiate with myself. I think of the feelings that I'm going to feel afterwards, and that's what I'm going to focus on. Who is the person that I wanted to be? How can I make my higher self proud today? And when this happens, you stop waiting to feel perfect, even if you're just starting out. You stop romanticizing inspiration. And most importantly, you stop needing to prove your worth, because you are worthy. We are worthy just because you are alive. And little by little, creativity becomes less about performance and more about relationship. The relationship with myself, the relationship that I have with presence, the relationship with trust, the relationship with who I came here to be. And I'm so passionate about this subject. One of the main reasons I create the creative flow activation, it is not to teach people how to become more productive, but to help people reconnect with the part of themselves that maybe have been buried for many years underneath fear, perfectionism, overthinking, comparison, and emotional suppression. Because, hey, let's be honest, creativity, you don't need to force creativity. We are creative forces of this universe. Creativity is not something that we force, creativity is something that we uncover. Because if you go back into old philosophies, everything already exists. And all you have to do is to tap into that same frequency to be able to bring to fruition. Creative Flow Activation is a 12-day program designed to help you rebuild trust with your creativity, again, through daily activations, reflections, and exercises. They are the very core of what I did to get out of my own creative blocks. So on these 12 days, you will receive a prompt or an exercise that is going to not only help you get out of your inner fears, whatever that is, but it will also help you connect with your truth of who you are. All right. So if you've been feeling creatively blocked lately, maybe you don't need more inspiration. Maybe all you need is just being honest with yourself. Maybe your creativity is not fully gone. It is just simply buried underneath years of emotional protection. And maybe the real work is not becoming fearless, but becoming more devoted to your own authentic expression. This may be a hard pill to swallow, but maybe your deepest work will never come from a part of you that it is you trying to fit in. The most authentic and creative version of you comes from the part of you willing to be fully alive. All right, that's it, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Decoding the Flow. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts and what was your biggest takeaway. And please feel free to share with someone who may need this reminder today. If you wanted to learn more about creative flow activation, I'm leaving everything in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Bye. Okay. Woohoo, gatinhas!